The rain in Seoul did not wash things clean, it just made the neon lights bleed across the wet pavement like fresh wounds. Elena stood in the doorway of her tiny semi-basement apartment in Mapo-gu, the damp air clinging to her skin. The smell hit her first, metallic and sharp, cutting through the usual scent of mildew and cheap instant ramen. It was the smell of copper. Dad. Her voice trembled, barely a whisper. The living room was a wreckage. The small table where she graded English papers late into the night was overturned. Papers scattered like white feathers. And there, huddled against the stained wallpaper, was her father. Or what was left of him. His face was a map of violence. One eye swollen shut, purple and angry. A cut across his lip that dripped blood onto his ruined shirt. He was weeping, a pathetic, broken sound that made Elena's stomach drop to her feet. Elena, he choked out, seeing her. He did not try to stand. He could not. They came. They said time is up. Elena dropped her bag, rushing to her knees beside him. Her hands hovered over his injuries, afraid to touch, afraid to make it worse. Who did this? We have until next week. You said we had until next week. The interest, he sobbed, gripping her wrist with a hand that shook violently. It compounded. The timeline changed. It's Minho. It's Park Minho. The name sucked the air out of the room. Park Minho. They called him the Goblin of Gangnam. He was not just a lone shark, he was a phantom. He owned half the real estate in the district and all of the shadows. He did not break legs, he erased existences. If her father owed money to Minho, they were not just in debt. They were dead. How much? Elena demanded, her blood turning to ice. How much, Dad? 500 million won. The number hung in the damp air, heavy and suffocating. 500 million. It was an impossible sum. She could work for 50 years teaching English at the academy and never scrape together a fraction of it. He gave me a message, her father whispered, looking away, unable to meet her eyes. He said if the money is not at the Vertex by midnight, he takes the collateral. We do not have collateral, Elena said, panic clawing at her throat. We do not own this apartment. We do not have a car. We have nothing. Her father finally looked at her. His good eye was wide, filled with a terrifying mix of shame and terror. He did not speak. He did not have to. The realization hit Elena like a physical blow. Her chest cracked open. Me, she breathed, the word tasting like bile. I'm the collateral. I did not agree to it, he cried, grabbing at her coat. I told them no. But the interest, Elena, they threatened to stop. She pulled her hand away, standing up. Her legs felt weak, unsteady, but a cold, hard resolve was hardening in her gut. She was not going to wait here for men in black suits to kick down the door and drag her out like a piece of furniture. She had survived moving to a foreign country, survived the stares and the whispers about her mixed heritage, survived the loneliness of being an outsider in a city that never slept. She would survive this. Where are you going? Her father gasped. To the Vertex, Elena said, her voice sounding strange to her own ears, flat, mechanical. To fix your mess. The Vertex was a monolith of black glass piercing the sky in the heart of Cheongdam-dong. It was where the elite of Seoul came to sin in private. Elena smoothed the skirt of her black dress, the only formal thing she owned, bought for a funeral she could not afford to attend. She felt ridiculously small standing before the massive steel doors. The bouncers were mountains of muscle in bespoke suits, wearing earpieces and expressions of bored violence. Name, the one on the left asked, not even looking at her. He saw a foreigner, a woman with frizzy curls and cheap shoes, and he had already dismissed her. Elena Vance, she said. I'm here to see Park Minho. The bouncer paused. He looked at her then, really looked at her, his eyes narrowing. He touched his earpiece, murmured something in rapid Korean. Silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Top floor, the bouncer said, stepping aside. Penthouse. Do not touch anything. The elevator ride was a blur of gold mirrors and vertigo. When the doors slid open, she was not stepping into an office. She was stepping into a cavern. The penthouse was vast, dimly lit, smelling of expensive cedar and something darker, old whiskey and cold power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Han River, the city lights glittering below like spilled diamonds. "You early." The voice came from the shadows near the window. It was deep, smooth, and wrapped in a texture that made the hair on Elena's arms stand up. A man stepped into the pool of moonlight. Park Minho. He was taller than she expected, leaning against a desk of dark walnut. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him with surgical precision, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His hair was black, swept back, revealing a face that was devastatingly handsome and utterly terrifying. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and eyes that were voids of dark intelligence. He did not look like a thug. He looked like a prince who had murdered the king. "My father sent me," Elena said, hating the way her voice wavered. She clenched her hands into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms until it hurt, using the pain to ground herself. "I know." Minho moved toward her. He moved with a predatory grace, silent and fluid. Adewale Vance. The man who thinks a pair of kings can beat a full house. He stopped 3 feet from her. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. He smelled of rain and sandalwood. "I'm here to negotiate," Elena said, lifting her chin. Minho tilted his head, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. It was not a nice smile. "Negotiate? You have nothing I want, Miss Vance. Your father has nothing. The debt is absolute." "I can work," she said quickly. "I have a degree. I speak 3 languages. I can pay you back in installments. With interest." Minho laughed. It was a dark, low sound that vibrated in her chest. 500 million won. Do you know how long it would take an English teacher to pay that back? 3 lifetimes. He stepped closer, closing the distance. The air in the room seemed to thin, making it hard to breathe. He reached out, and Elena flinched, her body betraying her fear. But he did not strike her. His hand, large, with long, elegant fingers, hovered near her face, then tucked a stray curl behind her ear. The touch was electric. Her skin prickled with awareness, a confusing jolt of heat that warred with the ice in her veins. "You are the Collateral," he murmured, his eyes tracking the rapid pulse in her throat. That was the deal. "I am not a thing," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You see, I not just own people. In my world, I own everything I touch." His hand slid down to her neck, resting there. His thumb brushed her pulse point. It felt less like a caress and more like he was checking for a heartbeat before stopping it. "But I do not want a slave, Elena. Slaves are boring. And I am very easily bored." He pulled away, walking back to his desk. He picked up a document and tossed it across the polished wood. It slid to a stop in front of her. "What is this?" she asked. "A solution," Minho said, pouring himself a glass of amber liquid. "Your father's debt is substantial. But his stupidity is useful. I need something, and you are uniquely qualified to provide it." Elena stepped forward, reading the title on the thick paper. Marriage contract. Her head snapped up. "You joking?" "My grandfather is dying," Minho said, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. "The board of directors is old-fashioned. They do not trust a single man with the keys to the kingdom. They want stability. They want a family man. If I am not married by the shareholder meeting next month, my position is vulnerable." He took a sip of his drink, watching her over the rim of the glass. "I need a wife, Elena. Someone outside of this circle. Someone with no connections to my rivals. Someone desperate enough to do exactly what I say. And if I refuse, then your father's debt comes due tonight." He checked his watch, a silver Patek Philippe that probably cost more than her father's life. "You have 20 minutes before my collection team arrives at your apartment. I assume your father is still there. Bleeding on the floor?" Elena felt nausea rise in her throat. This was a trap. A gilded, beautiful trap. 1 year, Minho said. "You play the role. You live in this house. You smile at galas. You wear the clothes I buy you. You pretend to adore me. And after a year, the debt is forgiven. You walk away with a settlement of 1 billion won. You disappear. Elena looked at the contract, then at the man standing in the moonlight. He was a monster. She knew that. But he was offering her a lifeline. There are rules, he added, his voice dropping an octave. What rules? Clause 4, he pointed with his glass. Fidelity is absolute. You do not look at other men. You do not speak to other men unless I permit it. In the eyes of Seoul, you are mine. And clause 9, Minho said, setting the glass down. He walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of her again. The intensity in his eyes was suffocating. You do not fall in love with me. Elena almost laughed. It was a hysterical, bubbling sound in her chest. That would not be a problem. Minho's eyes narrowed slightly. Good. Because I am not a man who loves, Elena. I possess. I consume. But I do not love. If you forget that, if you start looking at me with hope in those eyes, I will destroy you. He held out a pen. An expensive, heavy fountain pen. Tick-tock, Miss Vance. Elena took the pen. Her hand was shaking, but she forced it to steady. She thought of her father, broken on the floor. She thought of the men coming to kill him. She signed her name. The ink looked black as oil against the white paper. Elena Vance. The moment the tip of the pen lifted from the page, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavier, charged with a sudden, violent tension. Minho took the paper, checked the signature, and nodded. Done. I need to go, Elena said, backing away. I need to tell my dad. I need to pack my things. Minho moved faster than she thought possible. One moment he was by the desk, the next he was blocking her path to the elevator. He did not touch her, but his presence was a wall. No, he said softly. What? You do not go back there. My men are already moving your father to a secure facility. He will be treated, and he will be safe. But you. He took a step closer, towering over her. You stay here. I have clothes. I have my life. Your life is here now. Minho reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. A massive diamond, cold and sharp. He took her left hand. His grip was iron. You belong to this penthouse. You belong to the image we are creating. He slid the ring onto her finger. It was heavy. It felt like a shackle. Minho, please, show. He pressed a finger to her lips. His skin was rough, calloused, the hands of a fighter, hidden in the suit of a CEO. Accept it. It's safer this way. Suddenly, the elevator doors behind them chimed. Minho's head snapped toward the sound. His expression transformed instantly. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a cold, lethal focus. He grabbed Elena's arm, yanking her behind him. Get down, he hissed. The elevator doors slid open. 3 men stood there. They were not wearing suits. They wore tactical gear and masks. Silence held for a heartbeat. Then the world exploded. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. The glass vase on the console table shattered, sending shards flying like shrapnel. Elena screamed, throwing her hands over her head as Minho shoved her violently to the floor behind the heavy walnut desk. Stay down, he roared. He drew a gun from the waistband of his trousers, she had not even seen it there. He moved with terrifying efficiency. Pop. 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 3 shots. Controlled. Precise. Elena curled into a ball, pressing her face into the expensive carpet, her ears ringing, the smell of gunpowder choking her. She heard bodies hitting the floor. Heavy, wet thuds. Then, silence. Clear, Minho's voice said, but it sounded different now. Rougher. Breathless. He appeared above her, extending a hand. There was blood on his white shirt, a splatter of red across the pristine fabric. Not his blood. Are you hurt? He demanded, his eyes scanning her frantically. Elena shook her head, unable to speak. Her vision tunneled. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Minho grabbed her face between his hands. His palms were warm, searing against her cold skin. Look at me. Elena. Look at me. She forced her eyes to meet his. He was calm. Terrifyingly calm amidst the carnage. Welcome to the family, he said, his voice grim. Who were they? She managed to whisper. Business associates, Minho said, pulling her to her feet. He did not let go of her hand. His grip was bruising, possessive. They wanted to void my contract before the ink was dry. He looked at the bodies by the elevator, then back at her. The look in his eyes made her blood run cold. It was not fear. It was a promise of violence. Someone talked, he said, his voice dropping to a growl. Someone told them I found a wife. But I just signed it 2 minutes ago, Elena said, realizing the implication. Exactly. Minho pulled her flush against his chest, shielding her from the sight of the dead men. She could feel his heart hammering against her ribs, a steady, powerful rhythm. Which means the leak is inside this room. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. We're leaving, he said. Where? Somewhere safe. Because right now, sweetheart. He looked down at her, and for a second, the mask slipped. She saw something raw in his eyes. Panic. No, not panic. Desperation. Right now, you are the most valuable target in Seoul. He kicked open the door to the stairwell, dragging her into the darkness. Do not let go of my hand, he commanded. If you let go, you die. Elena gripped his hand. The ring on her finger dug into her skin, sharp and painful. She had signed a contract to save her father. She had not realized she had just signed up for a war. The stairwell was a concrete throat that swallowed their footsteps. 40 flights down. Elena's lungs burned, her breath coming in ragged gasps that echoed against the gray walls. Minho did not slow down. He descended with the terrifying efficiency of a machine, his hand clamped around hers, a manacle of bone and heat. They burst out into the subterranean garage, level before. It smelled of gasoline and silence. Get in. He shoved her toward a matte black sports car that looked less like a vehicle and more like a weapon. Elena barely had time to pull her legs inside before the engine roared to life, a primal, guttural sound that vibrated in her teeth. Minho peeled out of the spot, tires screeching a protest against the concrete. He drove one-handed, the other gripping a gun resting on the center console. His knuckles were white. Where are we going? Elena asked, her voice sounding small in the leather-clad interior. The police, should not we call the police? Minho laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. The police work for the people who just tried to kill us, Elena. Or they work for me. Either way, calling them brings a circus I do not have time for. He merged onto the highway, weaving through the late-night Seoul traffic at a speed that blurred the neon city into streaks of violent light. My father, she said, panic flaring again. Is safe, Minho cut her off, his tone sharp. I moved him to a private clinic in Incheon an hour before you arrived. It's a fortress. No one gets in without my retinal scan. He glanced at her then. The streetlights washed over his face, illuminating the sharp angle of his jaw and the tension coiled in his neck. Stop shaking, he commanded softly. I see not. You have to. Fear makes you predictable. Predictable gets you dead. He reached over, his hand leaving the steering wheel to cover her knee. The contact was shocking. His palm was hot, heavy. He squeezed, once, hard enough to ground her. I told you. I own everything I touch. That includes your safety. No one touches what is mine. The possessiveness should have terrified her. Instead, God help her, it made her chest crack open with relief. They drove for 2 hours, leaving the city far behind. The neon glow of Seoul faded into the crushing darkness of the mountains. They wound up a narrow, private road surrounded by dense pine forests that seemed to press in on the car. The safe house was not a cabin. It was a modernist box of concrete and glass perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a black void that she assumed was a valley. It looked lonely. It looked like him. Minho killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. Inside, he said. Do not touch the windows. The glass is bulletproof, but I do not want silhouettes. He punched a code into the door. It hissed open. The interior was freezing. Minho did not turn on the lights. He moved through the darkness with familiar ease, guiding her to a massive living area lit only by the moonlight filtering through the glass walls. He dropped his jacket on a leather sofa and turned to her. Are you hurt? I do not think so. Elena looked down at herself. Her black dress was ruined, torn at the hem. Her knees were scraped. But there was blood on her hands. Bright, sticky crimson. Minho, she whispered, staring at his white shirt. You re-bleeding. He looked down, seemingly surprised, as if he had not noticed the dark stain spreading across his left side. A graze. From the elevator. Sit down. The command came out of her mouth before she could stop it. Minho stared at her, his eyes dark pools. I'm fine. Sit down, she repeated, her voice shaking but firmer this time. You need to clean that. If you pass out from blood loss, I'm stranded in a glass box in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of assassins looking for me. A flicker of amusement, or maybe respect, crossed his face. He sat on the edge of the sofa. Elena found the first aid kit in the sleek, minimalist bathroom he pointed to. She brought a bowl of warm water and a cloth. Shirt, she said. Minho unbuttoned it slowly. His eyes never left her face. When he shrugged the fabric off, Elena's breath hitched. His body was a map of violence. Scars crisscrossed his torso, some old and faded, silver lines against tan skin, others newer, pink and jagged. A burn mark on his shoulder. A knife wound on his ribs. And now, a raw, angry gash across his oblique where the bullet had grazed him. Beautiful, are not they? He mocked softly, seeing her stare. The receipts of my business transactions. They look painful, she whispered. Pain is information. It tells you still alive. She dipped the cloth in water. This will sting. Do it. She pressed the cloth to the wound. Minho did not flinch. He did not even blink. But she felt his muscles bunch beneath her fingers, hard as stone. The heat radiating off him came in waves, making her dizzy. She worked in silence, cleaning away the blood. The intimacy of it was suffocating. Here they were, two strangers bound by a contract and a pile of dead bodies, alone in the dark. Why? She asked quietly, stitching the butterfly bandage over the cut. Why choose me? There are 1,000 women in Seoul who would marry you for the money. Women who know this world. Why a foreigner? Why a teacher with debt? Minho reached out, his hand catching her wrist, stopping her movements. Because those women are part of the game, he said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. They have families, alliances, fathers who would try to control me. You. He pulled her hand closer, until her palm rested against the bare skin of his chest, right over his heart. You are an outsider. You have no one but me. That makes you loyal by necessity. So I'm isolated, Elena said, feeling the heavy thud-thud-thud of his heart. That's your plan. Keep me in a cage. A golden cage, he corrected. With the door locked from the inside. To keep the wolves out. He leaned in. He was so close she could smell the whiskey and iron on him. His gaze dropped to her lips. The air between them crackled, electric and dangerous. For a second, she thought he would kiss her. She thought she wanted him to. Clause 9. Do not fall in love. Minho pulled back abruptly, releasing her hand as if it burned him. The mask slammed back into place. There's a guest room down the hall, he said, his voice cold again. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. I'll take the first watch. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the blackness, a solitary figure guarding his glass castle. Elena did not sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a footstep. When dawn finally broke, painting the mountains in hues of bruised purple and gray, she wandered out to the kitchen. Minho was already there. He had changed into a black t-shirt and sweatpants, looking deceptively domestic. He was making coffee. The smell was grounding. "Drink," he said, sliding a mug across the marble island. "Thank you." She wrapped her hands around the warmth. "What happens now?" Minho took a sip, his eyes scanning a tablet on the counter. "Now we find the leak. I have my head of security, Jinsu, sweeping the penthouse logs. Someone disabled the perimeter sensors 5 minutes before those men arrived. Could it be Jinsu? Jinsu took a bullet for me 3 years ago. He walks with a limp because of it. No." Minho swiped across the screen, his expression darkening. It's someone higher up. Someone who knew about the marriage clause in the grandfather's will before it was public. "Your family." Minho's laugh was dark. "Especially my family. My stepbrother, Taeho. He's been waiting for me to slip up for a decade. If I die unmarried, the company goes to him." Elena's stomach twisted. "So I'm not just a wife. I'm a human shield for your inheritance. You re the kingmaker, Elena." He looked up at her. The morning light softened the harsh lines of his face, making him look younger, less like a goblin and more like a man carrying the weight of the world. "And right now, Taeho knows you exist. Which means he will try to remove you from the board." "Remove me," she repeated. "You mean kill me?" "I mean he will try." Minho walked around the island. He stopped in front of her, boxing her in against the counter. "But he forgets one thing." "What?" "That I am not a businessman. I am a butcher who learned to wear a suit." He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. The touch was gentle, terrifyingly so. "And no one takes what is mine." Suddenly, his phone buzzed on the counter. A harsh, jarring sound. Minho did not look away from her for a second, then finally picked it up. "Speak." He listened. The color drained from his face. Not fear, rage. Pure, white-hot rage. "When?" he asked. "Are you sure?" He hung up. The phone cracked in his grip. "What?" Elena asked, her blood turning to ice. "Is it my father?" "No," Minho said. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. It's Jinsu. They found him. Found him. Dead, Minho said flatly. In the trunk of his car. But before he died, they made him talk. Minho grabbed her arm. "We have to go. Now." "Why?" "Minho, you said this place was safe." Jinsu knew about this place. Minho was already moving, dragging her toward the door. He gave it up. "They are not looking for us, Elena. They are already here." As if on cue, the shatterproof glass of the living room spiderwebbed. Crack. A high-velocity round impact. Then another. The glass held, but only just. "Get down." Minho tackled her, covering her body with his as a third shot punched through, sending shards of safety raining down on them. "They have a sniper," Minho hissed into her ear. "On the ridge. We ca not use the car. They'll blow it before we start the engine." "Then what do we do?" Elena cried, clutching his shirt. "We run." He pulled her up, keeping low. There's a trail down the cliffside. It leads to the old logging road. My extraction team is 10 minutes out. They scrambled toward the back door. Minho kicked it open. The cold mountain air hit them like a slap. Gunfire erupted from the tree-line. Bullets chewed up the dirt around their feet. They were pinned. Minho shoved her behind a stack of firewood. He pulled his gun, checking the magazine. "Listen to me," he said, his voice intense, his eyes locking onto hers. "When I start shooting, you run for the trees. Do not look back. Do not stop. Head downhill. I'm not leaving you." Elena screamed. "You signed a contract." He roared, the vein in his neck bulging. "You do what I say." Run, Elena. No. She grabbed his arm. Clause 9. You said I belong to you. You do not throw away your property. Minho stared at her. Something in his chest seemed to break. He looked at her not as an asset, not as collateral, but as her. Damn it, he cursed. He did not push her away. Instead, he grabbed her hand. Together then. On 3. 1. He took a breath. 2. He squeezed her hand. 3. They broke cover. Minho fired blindly toward the ridge, providing suppressing fire. Elena ran, her lungs burning, the icy wind whipping her hair. They made the tree lean. The forest swallowed them. But the footsteps behind them were heavy, fast, and numerous. Keep moving. Minho urged, pushing her forward. They slid down a steep embankment, mud and pine needles slick under their feet. Elena stumbled, twisting her ankle. She cried out, falling. Elena. Minho was there instantly, hauling her up. I see a knot, she gasped, pain shooting up her leg. Minho, go. Leave me. Never. He scooped her up into his arms, ignoring the strain, ignoring the blood seeping through his bandage. He ran with her. They reached the old logging road. It was empty. Where are they? Elena wept. Your team. You said 10 minutes. Minho stopped, his chest heaving. He set her down against a large rock, turning to face the direction they had come. Not coming, he said quietly. What? Minho looked at his phone. No signal. The jammer. Blocking comms. My team does not know we under attack. He looked at the forest. Shadows were moving between the trees. 6, maybe 8 men. Armed. Professional. Minho turned back to Elena. He knelt in the mud, cupping her face. His thumbs brushed away her tears. Elena. Minho, do not. She knew that tone. It was a goodbye. There is a hunting cabin 2 miles south. Follow the river. Hide there. No, she sobbed. I see a not carry you and fight them. I have to draw them away. He leaned his forehead against hers. You asked why I chose you. It was not just because you were isolated. He closed his eyes. It was because the first time I saw you, 3 months ago at that coffee shop in Hongdae, you were reading a book and laughing to yourself, and for 5 seconds, I forgot that my life was hell. Elena's eyes widened. You knew who I was. I've known for a long time. He kissed her then. It was not gentle. It was desperate. It tasted of salt and fear and doom. It was a kiss that seared itself into her soul, a branding iron marking her as his. He pulled back, his eyes burning. Clause 9 is void. Run. He stood up, turned away from her, and walked back toward the oncoming shadows. Hey! Minho shouted, his voice echoing through the valley, the voice of the goblin. You want the crown? Come and take it. Gunfire erupted. Elena scrambled backward, dragging her injured leg, tears blinding her. She saw Minho raise his gun. She saw the muzzle flashes. She saw him take down one man, then another. Then she saw the silhouette of a man on the ridge, raising a rifle. Minho, she screamed. The shot rang out. A singular, terrible crack. Minho jerked. His gun fell from his hand. He crumpled to the mud. No. The shadows descended on his fallen body. Elena scrambled for a rock, a branch, anything. But a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. A cloth pressed against her nose. The smell of chemicals. Sleep, princess, a voice whispered in her ear. Taeho has been dying to meet you. The world went gray, then black. The last thing she saw was Minho lying still in the dirt, the snow beginning to fall, turning the red blood to pink ice. The world smelled of wet concrete and expensive cologne. Elena woke to the sensation of cold metal biting into her wrists. Her head throbbed, a rhythmic pounding behind her eyes that matched the ache in her twisted ankle. She forced her eyes open. She was not in a dungeon. She was in a penthouse, not Minho's sleek, dark sanctuary, but a gaudy display of gold leaf and white marble. It was unfinished, raw beams exposed in the ceiling, plastic tarps flapping against the panoramic windows where the glass had not been installed yet. The wind howled through the gaps, carrying the freezing bite of the Seoul winter. Finally. The voice was light, almost cheerful. Elena lifted her head. Sitting on a velvet chair across from her was a man who looked like a softer, crueler version of Minho. Same sharp jaw, same dark eyes, but where Minho was granite, this man was dough. He held a glass of champagne, swirling the bubbles. "Tae-ho," Elena rasped. Her throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. "Sister-in-law," Tae-ho smiled, showing teeth that were too white. Or should I say, widow? The word hit her like a physical blow. The memory crashed back, the snow, the gunshot, Minho crumbling to the mud. "No," she whispered. Her chest cracked open, a hollow ache spreading through her ribs. "You did not." "I did," Tae-ho said, standing up and walking toward her. He stopped to admire the view of the city, his city now. A tragedy, really. The Goblin of Gangnam, gunned down by a rival faction in the mountains. A romantic end for a violent man. He turned to her, his expression hardening. But he left a mess. "You." Elena pulled against the zip ties binding her to the construction chair. "If he's dead, let me go. I'm nobody. The contract is void." "Oh, Elena. You not nobody." Tae-ho crouched in front of her, the smell of his cologne overpowering the scent of dust. "You are the legal wife of the chairman. Which means you hold the shares. You hold the keys." He pulled a document from his jacket pocket. "Another contract." "Sign this," he said, holding up a gold pen, so similar to the one Minho had given her, yet so different. "It transfers all assets to me. Executive power, the real estate, the accounts. Sign it, and I'll give you a plane ticket back to, where was it? Houston. No, London. Wherever you came from. And if I do not?" Tae-ho sighed, feigning sadness. He snapped his fingers. Two men stepped out from the shadows of the unfinished hallway. Between them, they dragged a man. Elena's scream died in her throat. It was not Minho. It was her father. Adewale Vance looked frail, confused, wearing a hospital gown and a coat that was not his. He was not beaten like before, but he looked sedated, his eyes unfocused. "Dad." "Elena," he slurred, blinking at her. "Where?" "Minho said I was safe." "Minho lied," Tae-ho said smoothly. "Minho is dead, old man." He looked back at Elena. "The clinic was secure, yes. But money opens every door, my dear. Even secure ones." He pressed the cold tip of the pen against Elena's cheek. "Sign the transfer. Or I throw your father off this balcony. It's 30 floors down. He would not even feel the impact." Elena stared at her father, then at Tae-ho. The fear that had paralyzed her in the mountains was gone. In its place was something cold and hard. A shard of ice in her veins. She had spent 3 months watching Minho. She had learned from the Silent King. Fear makes you predictable. "Unbind my hands," Elena said, her voice steady. Tae-ho raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me. I see not sign if my hands are tied." Tae-ho laughed. He nodded to one of his guards. The men stepped forward and sliced the plastic tie with a knife. Elena rubbed her wrists, the blood rushing back into her hands, prickling like needles. She took the pen. She looked at the paper. "You rewrite," she said softly. "I'm just a teacher. I do not belong in this world." "Smart girl." Tae-ho leaned in closer, greedy, watching the tip of the pen hover over the signature line. Elena gripped the pen. It was heavy. Metal. Sharp. She did not sign. With a scream of pure rage, she drove the pen upward, slamming it into Tae-ho's thigh. He shrieked, a high-pitched sound of shock, and stumbled back, clutching his leg. "You bitch. Run, Dad." Elena yelled, throwing herself out of the chair. She was not aiming for the door. She was aiming for the guard holding the knife. She crashed into him. It was clumsy, desperate. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The knife skittered across the concrete floor. Kill her. Tae-ho screamed, blood seeping through his expensive trousers. Throw them both off. The second guard lunged for her father. Elena scrambled for the knife, her fingers brushing the hilt. Boom. The heavy steel door of the penthouse did not open. It disintegrated. A shaped charge blew the hinges inward, sending a cloud of dust and shrapnel flying into the room. The shockwave knocked the guards off their feet. Elena covered her head, coughing in the sudden haze of pulverized drywall. Through the smoke, a figure emerged. He walked with a limp. He was covered in mud and dried blood. His black t-shirt was torn to shreds, revealing the makeshift bandage wrapped around his torso, a bandage soaked through with fresh red. But the gun in his hand was steady. Minho. He looked like a demon who had crawled his way out of hell. His face was pale, his eyes burning with a terrifying, hollow darkness. Minho. Elena breathed. Tae-ho scrambled backward, his face draining of color. No. I saw you fall. I saw the body. You saw what you wanted to see. Minho's voice was a gravelly growl. He stepped into the room. He did not look at Elena. He did not look at her father. His entire existence was focused on Tae-ho. Kill him. Tae-ho shrieked at his men. There's only one of him. The two guards recovered, raising their weapons. Minho did not hesitate. He moved. Even injured, even bleeding out, he was faster than them. He fired 2 shots. Pop. Pop. Mechanical finality. The guards dropped before they could pull their triggers. Minho kept walking. Tae-ho tried to crawl away, dragging his wounded leg. Brother, wait. Wait. We can talk. The shares, I'll give them back. I'll give you half. Minho reached him. He did not shoot. He kicked the gun out of Tae-ho's reach and stomped on his chest. Tae-ho wheezed, air forced out of his lungs. Please. Minho looked down at him. There was no mercy in his eyes. Only the cold indifference of a predator looking at prey. You touched her, Minho said softly. I did not. I swear. You put your hands on my wife. Minho leaned down, pressing the muzzle of his gun to Tae-ho's forehead. I told you, Tae-ho. I consume. Minho, no. Elena scrambled up. Do not. Minho froze. His finger hovered over the trigger. He looked at her then. His eyes were wild, dilated. He was barely holding on to consciousness. He tried to kill you. If you kill him like this, you the monster they say you are, Elena said, stepping over the debris, approaching him carefully. You the goblin. Do not be the goblin for him. Be the man who saved me. Minho's hand trembled. The rage was warring with exhaustion. He threatened your father, Minho rasped. And now he's nothing, Elena said. She reached out, placing her hand over his, over the gun. The metal was hot from firing. Look at him. He's terrified. He's beaten. Let the police have him. Let him rot in a cell knowing he lost to you. Minho stared at her. The tension in his shoulders was a taut wire ready to snap. Then, slowly, the wire slackened. He pulled the gun away. He stepped back. Tae-ho sobbed with relief. Thank you. Thank you, Minho turned and kicked Tae-ho in the face. A brutal, efficient blow that knocked him out cold. I'm not the police, Minho muttered. He can sleep until they get here. The adrenaline that had been holding Minho upright vanished. He swayed. Minho. Elena caught him as his knees buckled. He was heavy, dead weight against her. They sank to the floor together amidst the dust and the ruins of the penthouse. You came back, she wept, pressing her hands to his chest, trying to staunch the bleeding from his side. You idiot, you came back. Minho looked up at her, his vision unfocused. His hand came up, wet with blood, to cup her cheek. Clause 9, he whispered, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. What? I broke Clause 9, he wheezed. I fell in love. Elena's heart stopped, then hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. I know, she choked out. Me too. I broke it too. Good, Minho breathed, his eyes fluttering closed. Then we both, in breach of contract. His hand fell from her face. Minho. Minho. Elena screamed for help, her voice echoing in the empty, unfinished tower, while the sirens began to wail in the distance, getting closer. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and lilies. Elena sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, watching the rhythm of the heart monitor. Beep. 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 It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Minho had been in surgery for 6 hours. The bullet had missed his heart by inches, but the blood loss had been catastrophic. The doctors said his survival was a statistical anomaly. Elena knew it was just stubbornness. He's waking up. Elena jumped. She had not heard the nurse come in. But it was not a nurse. It was her father. Adewale stood at the door, leaning on a cane, looking older but clear-eyed. He's tough, this one, her father said, walking over to the bed. He looked at Minho with a strange mixture of fear and begrudging respect. He paid off the debt, Elena. Before the wedding. He paid it in full. I know, she said quietly. He also set up a trust in my name. Enough to retire. Enough to never gamble again. Her father sighed. I judged him. I thought he was just a thug in a suit. But thugs do not come back for people like us. He's not a thug, Elena said, taking Minho's limp hand. He's complicated, a raspy voice finished. Elena's head snapped toward the bed. Minho's eyes were open. They were hazy with morphine, but they were his. Minho. She stood up, leaning over him. Do not try to talk. You need to rest. Water, he croaked. She held a straw to his lips. He drank greedily, then coughed, grimacing in pain. Teho, he asked. In custody, Elena said. The police found everything. The embezzlement, the hitman, the kidnapping. He's going away for life. The board voted this morning. You the undisputed chairman. Minho closed his eyes, exhaling a long breath. And you? I'm here. You should not be. He looked at her, and the vulnerability was back. The contract is over, Elena. The debt is paid. The threat is gone. You can go. Elena looked at her father. Adewale nodded once, patted her shoulder, and quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. Elena turned back to Minho. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. The contract. Minho watched her. Tear it up. Okay. She tore the paper in half. Then in quarters. She let the pieces flutter to the floor like snow. Now I'm free. She asked. Yes, Minho said, though his voice sounded hollow. You free. Good. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. She took his hand again, interlacing their fingers. Because I do not want to be your employee anymore. Minho frowned, confused. Elena. I want to renegotiate, she said, her voice trembling slightly. New terms. What terms? Clause 1, she said, leaning down so her face was inches from his. No more secrets. No more safe houses I do not know about. Minho stared at her, his thumb brushing her knuckle. Agreed. Clause 2, she continued. You do not face the bullets alone. If we at war, we at war together. Minho's jaw tightened. He hated that one. She could see it. He wanted to lock her in a tower. But he nodded slowly. Agreed. And Clause 3, Elena whispered, tears pricking her eyes. You have to say it. You have to say it when you not bleeding out on a floor. Minho looked at her. The mask was gone completely. The Silent King was just a man. I love you, he said. The words were rough, unpolished, and perfect. I love you, Elena. You are my weakness. You are my strength. You are the only thing in this godforsaken city that is real. I love you too, she said. She kissed him. It was not the desperate kiss of the cliffside, or the terrified kiss of the contract. It was slow. It was gentle. It was a promise. 1 year later, the winter gala at the Grand Hyatt was the event of the season. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns, the air humming with gossip and jazz. When the doors opened, the room went silent. Minho walked in. He looked different than he had a year ago. The darkness was still there, he would always be dangerous, but the jagged edges had been smoothed. He wore his tuxedo with careless elegance, his hand resting protectively on the small of his wife's back. Elena walked beside him. She was not the terrified girl in the cheap funeral dress anymore. She wore deep emerald silk that hugged her curves, her natural curls pinned up with diamonds that caught the light. She held her head high, meeting the stares of the elite with a cool, practiced smile. They moved through the crowd like a single entity. Bows were deeper now. Respect was absolute. They afraid of you, Minho murmured in her ear, his breath warm against her skin. They afraid of us, Elena corrected, taking a glass of sparkling water from a waiter. They stepped out onto the balcony, away from the noise. The Seoul skyline glittered before them, a sprawling ocean of light. The Namsan Tower glowed in the distance. Minho wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. His hands moved to rest gently on her stomach. It was barely visible, just a small curve beneath the silk, but his touch was reverent. Are you tired? He asked, his voice thick with concern. We can leave. I'm fine, she leaned back into him. I was just thinking. About what? About Collateral, she smiled. About how I was supposed to be a pawn. You were never a pawn, Elena. Minho turned her in his arms. He looked down at her, and the look in his eyes, that mixture of hunger and worship, made her knees weak, even after a year. You were the queen. I just did not know the rules of the game yet. He kissed her forehead, then her lips. Happy anniversary, Mrs. Park. Happy anniversary, Minho. Below them, the city moved on, unaware of the monsters and the miracles that happened in the penthouses above. The danger would never truly be gone, not in their world. But as Elena looked at the men who would burn the city to keep her warm, she knew one thing for certain. She was not trapped in the cage anymore. She owned the keys.